now. I think since 2008, so the Great Recession, there's been a 30 to 40% consolidation of the dental market, meaning that 30 or 40% of all dentists are now owned by a corporation.
Wow.
And corporations are kind of sneaky, right? So you've heard of probably Aspen Dental, right? That's one of the biggest DSOs. They're all branded Aspen Dental. So you see them on the block. There's the blue sign with the A. There's another big player in the group called Heartland Dental. So Heartland Dental is actually kind of sneaky. They own, I think, last I heard, they own 1,600 offices around the United States. And I think they're expanding to Canada now.
Wow.
But each individual office is individually branded for that community. So you will never know if you're actually going to a corporate dental office because they're branded individually. Also, they buy out other offices. So like you were saying, when a dentist becomes burnt out from the business side of it, you can actually sell your practice to, Heartland. And they will run your office under the same name, but basically have a corporate backend that they run from. And so it's kind of tricky as a consumer or a patient to find an office that's, okay, hey, you know what, I want to support the local guy. You have to almost ask, like, hey, are you owned by a DSO or not? Because they're just so prevalent out there. And I was reading some research. I think they're saying within the next 10 years, they're saying the dental market's going to be about 60 to 70% saturated,
Wow.
which is crazy, right? So to kind of address your question, like, okay, hey, what about device sales or dental device sales? Yes, there is these dental side corporations. But what they're doing is kind of vying for the DSO money, right? So they're trying to vie to kind of get into these partnerships with DSOs or get into partnerships with these bigger kind of chain dental offices rather than really focus on the, lone soldier individual dental office. So I'll give you a perfect example, right? So we have dental labs that we work with. So every kind of contractor that you have in the office, you can negotiate with to a certain extent. So we pay a certain price for crowns versus, other things and other supplies. Again, the quantity of scale is, I pay X amount. Let's just say, I won't throw out a number, but I pay X amount for a crown to be made for my office. I found out recently a DSO, who was the local DSO, they're not even that big, pays about half of what we pay for a single crown, right? Because just they have leverage of like, hey, we have volume, give us a better deal. So again, you're still getting screwed by being an individual practice owner because you don't have enough volume to then negotiate with this, contractor, right? Same goes for dental implants, right? So I talked to a sales rep just earlier this week. I'm like, hey, what's the price? Well, she's like, oh, it depends on volume. If you buy a certain amount, I can give you a 20% discount. But if you start a certain amount, I can give you a 50% discount. So guess what DSOs are buying? They're buying at a giant volume, and they're able to get their things down to a certain lab cost. Another big player in the space is Invisalign, right? So like Invisalign is owned by Align Technology. They have partnerships with these DSOs to use their product because there are, knockoff or like generic versions of Invisalign, right? But certain DSOs have certain partnerships with them, and it brings the cost down basically half of what I'm paying for the same thing, right? So the amount of money that I'm, you're paying for your Invisalign or I'm paying for my Invisalign is twice as much of what a DSO is paying, right? So again, these DSOs just based on volume alone have a competitive edge compared to these private practice owners. So private practice owners really have to be savvy in the way they practice because all their costs are inflated and they have none of the benefit that the DSOs do of having a larger volume to kind of work with. There are kind of buying groups and things like that have formed over the years. But again, you just have to be almost a savvy business person in order to kind of make it or at least stay afloat in this world.
I'm sure some DSOs too, they probably still put the same price as a private practice because they got it for a cheaper cost and because it's a very profit-driven model, they're like, oh, if I bought it for $50 and the private practice bought it for $100 and we both listed for $150, well, that's an extra $100 in my pocket.
Oh, that's exactly what happens. Yeah, no. There's no cost saving passed down to the consumer here. All that money goes straight to the pockets of the private equities and the owners of whoever owns those DSOs. I remember working from a DSO and then my fees at an office as a DSO were my lab cost and my Invisalign cost is exactly the same as what I charge now. but except everything costs twice as less at my corporate office of what I pay now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure even from the dentist perspective, sure, there's certain advantages that if you're a dentist and you work in a corporate office that, okay, I don't have to manage the business side as much. But I'm sure that because there's shareholders at the top, they're probably encouraging you to take more patients in a smaller amount of time because more patients means more profit. Whereas if you own your own business, you can essentially make your own schedule, make your own hours, and be more independent. So obviously in any avenue, when you have your own business, it's much more encouraging to you that, okay, I can make my own hours and I can make my own schedule. But usually whatever I'm inputting in my energy results in a decent or rewarding output. Whereas for, whether it's a corporate dentist or anything corporate, I could be working twice as hard as the guy next to me, but at the end of the day, we're probably making the same amount of money. And it's all depends on office politics and promotion cycles and all that other stuff. So it almost makes me wonder that what is the step forward for dentists in the future? I know that you were luckily able to come out of that corporate bubble, and you have your own practice now. So I guess what ticked in your mind that I gotta get out of here, do my own thing, and then what would you say because the numbers that you're bringing up are very concerning, and even so many people are graduating from dental school. How would you advise a future dentist or a current dentist that, hey, what I advise is follow the path of starting your own practice, just like I did, or acquiring a practice. Would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I think to answer your first question, like what led me to this, I've always wanted to have my own practice. I'm very entrepreneurial from a young age. We can get into that in a little bit, but like I've always wanted to have my own business. I've had my own businesses over the years that I've started. So when it came to dentistry, I always knew that was going to be my path, and I've kind of like made these conscious and unconscious decisions over the years to kind of get me ready for that path. In terms of advice, what I would give to young dentist or a dental student or a dentist that feels like they're stuck, I think, to be honest, in dentistry the path forward is entrepreneurship or figuring out a place that at least will offer you true equity in your practice where you can at least earn beyond what you're actually producing, right? Because it is commission based. So basically there's no PTO in dentistry, right? So when you take time off, you're not producing dentistry, aka you're not getting paid, right? So if you feel threatened or daunting of the idea of owning your own practice, it is a lot of work, right? I'm always working. There's always something going on. There's always something to do with my practice. But at the same time, I find that very rewarding. I'm passionate about it. And so if you're not passionate about that, then find a practice that's ethical, find a private practice that you feel like you can work with, and find somewhere where you can have some growth potential beyond just being a hired help, basically a high paid employee. Find somewhere where you can grow yourself. I'm sure you have it with your company, right? There's RSUs, right? So you have restricted stock units, you have equity, or you have some skin in the game. So find a place where you can get skin in the game, and grow your value beyond just being an employee.